Today's launch of the Research Institute for Health Innovation is an important step forward to achieving our vision of world-class healthcare inspired by our people and our communities. As a physician myself, I've been fortunate to be involved in many research projects over the years, and I'm excited by the promise of elevating research and discovery, learning and innovation through this Research Institute. I reflect on my own journey. Many years ago, I was actually a summer research student at the Hospital for Sick Children, at that Research Institute. Now we have one in our backyard. I then went to Europe to complete a doctorate in tumor immunology. Nothing excites the clinician more than the excitement of new discovery. As one of Canada's largest hospitals, we have an incredible foundation of expertise led by a stellar group of researchers who will continue to push the boundaries of science and innovation and impact healthcare for generations to come. I know that in a few minutes, you'll hear from one of Osler's all-star researchers, Dr. Sergio Borgia. Dr. Borgia, your dedication to improving patient care and patient outcomes continues to inspire us all. Thank you for being part of this afternoon's ceremony. Today is day 2 of Celebrate Research Week 2024. It's a remarkable and diverse roster of events, including thought-provoking panels, art installations, and keynote speakers. This week is not only a showcase for research excellence by Osler, our incredible partners, it also represents a catalyst for new opportunities, partnerships, and knowledge generation. Congratulations, Tiziana Rivera and Patty Rempel and your entire team for curating this incredible week ahead of us. And I thank all of you for coming out today, and I hope you take advantage of the week ahead. And now I'd like to welcome to the stage a special guest, Connie Stefankowitz, a board member of the Osler Board of Directors. Connie.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Martino, and thank you to MP Duncan for those very inspiring words that we heard today. There is so much going on in our research community, and I'm just thrilled to be here to be part of this. It is an honor to be here with so many dedicated individuals who are working tirelessly to improve the health and well-being of our communities and the research that has such a wide impact. As a member of the Osler Board of Directors, I'm proud to see this launch and the continued growth of Osler research. The 10-year journey is a testament to the collective strength of Osler, our researchers, and our community partners. With that, I'm also very excited to hear from Dr. Sergio Borgia about the international and local collaborations that have enabled his research and community involvement. Thank you again for joining us, and I will pass it back to Tiziana to take us through its very inspiring and exciting launch.
Thank you, Connie, for being here. It means a lot to have your support. Okay, so this week we're happy to introduce our new strategic plan for the Osler Research Institute for Health Innovation, or ORIHI. This plan marks a very bold and ambitious, exciting new chapter for research at Osler, guiding our path forward for the next 5 years. Over the past year, we've had over 3,700 partners, from patients and healthcare professionals to researchers and community members, to help us shape this strategy. Their insights have been invaluable, and we have listened closely and integrated that feedback into our strategic plan. We've also engaged our community-based research advisory committee. Some of them are here today. Let me share with you some of the key components of our strategy. At the heart of everything we do is our purpose, transforming discoveries into practice for better health. This continues to be the driving force behind our work at Osler, where we bridge the gap between scientific discoveries and real-world healthcare solutions. For over a decade, we've focused on applied research, turning innovations into treatments, practices, and technologies that directly impact on patients. Our strategic pillars are built around three key areas: personalized health, population health, and health systems. These areas represent what we are focusing our efforts on to improve health outcomes on an individual level, across populations, and within our healthcare system itself. You may notice that Celebrate Research Week was designed to demonstrate work that is already happening here. And you can see that in the agenda for this week, and we hope that you'll be able to participate in many of the activities. We will continue to work to build these pillars and to strengthen the partnerships we have developed and will continue to grow. The Research Strategic Plan also identifies 5 priorities that will guide us as we strive for excellence in this area. People and culture. At Osler, we know that diverse ideas, collaboration, and continuous learning are essential for impactful growth. Our people are our strength. Collaborations and community. Our research must reflect the priorities of our community, and we aim to involve them at every step of the process. Sustainable funding. Ensuring continuous diverse funding streams is crucial for sustaining our research. We are actively engaging in partnerships to make this happen. Knowledge and sharing translation. We must communicate our findings to ensure that they are applied in practice and unique activities to maximize their impact. And we will ensure this in ways that are important to our community. Researchers often, and clinicians often get criticized that it takes a really long time before research is being published and how long it takes to get into practice. So we want to shorten that time frame. The 5th area is research services and infrastructure. We can't do what we want our clinicians to do and our communities to be engaged in if we don't allow and create that infrastructure to support them to do it in a really, really easy way. So over the past decade, ORIHI has contributed to the scientific community in remarkable ways. We know that ORIHI is not just a research institute. It's a vibrant, growing community that's produced groundbreaking work. Today, as we look to the future, we're excited about the potential that lies ahead. This bold new path for research builds on the strength of our team, the collaboration of our partners, and the support of our communities. I know that together we'll continue to grow, make a difference, and keep changing lives. Earlier this week, we installed our new ORIHI banner in the lobby, and this is how the reveal went. Are you playing that, or am I playing it? It's here on display at Etobicoke General as a symbol of our commitment to pushing the boundaries of research and innovation. And I invite you to go out and see it once we're completed here. So it's my pleasure now to introduce Dr. Sergio Borgia, an infectious diseases consultant here at Osler. Dr. Borgia's career includes groundbreaking work in infectious diseases, control of multi-drug resistant bacteria, viral hepatitis, and tuberculosis. He has made significant contributions to the field, including working with an international team to describe the first outbreak of CPE, a group of antibody-resistant bacteria, and co-founding a multidisciplinary TB clinic in collaboration with Peel Public Health. Dr. Borgia believes in strong patient advocacy for Peel Region's residents and seeks to increase access to healthcare resources, innovative treatments, and cross-disciplinary models of care. He's considered a leader in the field of infectious diseases, and I'd like to invite Dr. Borgia to give us his talk.
Well, thank you. I did all that? Okay, before I start, I just want to make sure that, okay, got it. So thank you. Thank you very much for the invitation. And I must say, I am so happy to see so many people come out and see so many distinguished guests and friends and colleagues. And I'm going to say collaborators because I'm going to speak about collaborations in research. And many of you I have had the pleasure of collaborating with. So as Tiziana mentioned, I am an infectious diseases consultant here at William Osler. I provide clinical infectious diseases services for adults head to toe, as well as consulting for the infection prevention and control program. My clinical and academic areas of interest are as mentioned, viral hepatitis, tuberculosis, and multi-drug resistant bacteria. And I was asked to give some remarks or some comments about collaborations as we launch this very, very exciting phase of research with the new institute at Osler. And I was so happy that they asked me to speak specifically about this topic, because I think that when you talk about research, I don't think you can, in today's age, really have any meaningful conversation about research without going into how you actually do research and what is involved in research. And when you start to unpack that, you very quickly realize that collaborations come to the forefront of what a successful research project, research institute, research undertaking involves. So let me, and I don't want to, I want this to be interactive and not as formal as it seems. And I want you to think about some of these things because we'll have an opportunity to discuss it a little bit later after the slides are done, because I want to hear what you folks think, welcome feedback and questions as well. So the first thing to think about is all research collaborative? What does it mean to actually do collaborative research? And there were historically some different ways of doing research. Essentially, back in the day, a long time ago, most research was not done in the way we think about it today in either big or even small teams. It was really at the individual level. You have these iterative trial and error experimentation models in the classic or golden age of research, like the kinds of research that Louis Pasteur would do or Isaac Newton do. A lot of this was research in their brain, and then the empiricism that they would then take those ideas to a laboratory, whether it was a wet lab or a physics laboratory or a medical laboratory, and try to get those ideas into some reproducible format. And that's great. And a lot of research is still done like that. But to be honest, most research now happens in a group setting, in a team setting, in a collaborative approach. And you have two different ways of looking at that. One way, and these are by no means exhaustive, is in an intra-departmental focused way within one geographic area. So that's typically a relationship of the professor-student or the mentor-student or mentee, and in a small team within one place. So that's sort of an collaborative in-group, intra-departmental collaboration of research. The other way to look at it is X group or cross-disciplinary interdepartmental group. This is when you collaborate not only within your location, but with other scientists and researchers at the local, national, or even international level. And that's really how, quote unquote, big research happens, today. The importance of collaboration cannot be understated. And the reason is because it allows for an exponential expansion of resources, whether that is material resources, or intellectual resources, as well as expertise, as well as the generation of ideas. Because behind every successful and good research undertaking, all those three things have to come together: resources, expertise, and the idea behind it. So as I mentioned, most modern research is in fact collaborative, with few exceptions. And you have to think about that in terms of what is the goal that you're trying to achieve? What is the outcome that you're trying to achieve? Because this begs the question, is collaboration right for this particular research question that I want to answer? And most of the time it is, and there is a match there. There's a meshing or an integration, but not all questions are suitable for that type of research. So it is very important that before you undertake whatever it is that you want to do, an experiment, a trial, a project, you have to think about it and frame it. Is this suitable for this type of research undertaking, i.e. the collaborative model? And so what are the characteristics of collaborative research? How does it actually work? What are the rules of engagement? What's the operating logic behind it? Who drives it? How do you participate in it? What is your role in it, both at the individual and team level? These are all, and I'm not going to sort of go into detail about that. I just raise these points here as food for thought about how collaborative research takes place in the real world and in real time. Because Tiziana mentioned, sometimes we're frustrated by impasses or challenges or the length of time that something might take to get an idea off the ground, whether it's conceptually going to the design of a project and what's the best way to answer those questions, whether it's through a trial. Is that a retrospective trial? Is that data mining? Is that a prospective trial? Is that a randomized trial? Is it a placebo trial? Is it just a descriptive trial? Is it a case series? All of these types of research endeavors lend themselves well to partnerships and to collaborations. So what are the fruits of collaborative research? Well, I think that it's synergy, which is a concept I borrowed from antibiotics. When we use two antibiotics together that work better than each one works by itself. So what is synergy? So synergy is when the resultant outcome is actually greater than the sum of its parts. Essentially, it's when you undertake research with other experts in such a way that hopefully 1 + 1 = 3 instead of equals 2 at the end of the day. And this can happen in nuclear chain reactions, but it can also happen during research collaborations. Successful collaborative research essentially is predicated on relationship building, because the very word of collaboration means you have more than one party involved in the mutually agreed upon contract of who's going to do what in terms of the division of labor of the actual research. And these relationships must be grounded in trust, in respect, in reciprocity, and in reputation. You need all of these things to lend credibility to the collaborative research enterprise. Because essentially, if you miss any of these four key concepts, the endeavor, the project will then start to fall apart. There'll be undermining involved, and you can't have that in a successful research partnership. You must engage your collaborators with mutual respect, trust, and reciprocity, knowing that you have their back, they have your back, and that you're all trying to achieve the same outcome. You're not all going to do the same thing, and you may not all have the same motivations to do the same project. But at the end of the day, it's like any team, right? Like the defenseman's job is not the same as the forward's job, but at the end of the day, they still got to win the game. So that's what collaborative research If anybody was wondering, I'm a big Maple Leafs fan, so everything comes back to this sort of hockey analogy. And I'll tell my son this evening that I got that analogy into the talk. Anyway, trust, respect, reciprocity, and reputation. Okay, but these aren't without their challenges or without their pitfalls. What are some of these pitfalls? Well, what I call the temptation of collaboration, right? So going back to my first comments about ask yourself, is this the right model for what I want to undertake or investigate? And I caution then to not be lured into collaborating simply because it seems to be like what everybody's doing, or because it's popular, or it's expected of you, or even because you want to collaborate with other experts who are like you, or who may actually like you. Don't fall into that temptation, because you don't want to go into a research echo chamber and just have people validate. You want to challenge, you want to push boundaries. You may end up collaborating with someone with whom you're very collegial, of course, and you're very professional, but you may actually not be necessarily completely aligned with every aspect of that undertaking. So resist that temptation of collaboration, for these superficial or political reasons. However, as I mentioned, social capital is very, very important. And if you have those 4 things that I mentioned before, you will get a lot of goodwill credit and a lot of social capital when you engage in collaborative group work. Be mindful that we had a saying in infectious diseases, if you're on a combination of antibiotics and the patient's getting better, don't change it. And if they're not getting better, then they're probably not on the right treatment. So stop what you're doing if it isn't or hasn't worked. And as an example, I'm involved in a research project now on a recent outbreak of a waterborne pathogen that we discovered was from a contaminated product from a vendor. I want to partner with this vendor to do some research, and the vendor isn't necessarily very interested, and that's okay, right? So I put out the gesture, and I only bring that up. I don't want to, this isn't to highlight any particular vendor. It's simply to make the point that I'm not going to go down that tact anymore, because that conversation has sort of exhausted itself. And similarly, don't get too big too fast and bite off more than you can chew and expand networks or collaborative efforts too quickly, because there is some danger in that. You need to do your homework, and you need to do your no pun intended research on your collaborators, and yes, expand, but only do so after careful vetting to make sure that the synergies are more likely than not to work. So what are some challenges in research collaboration? Well, historically, in mature research institutes, collaborative networks have tended to attract the best and brightest scientists. These are very, very mature institutes like the Pasteur Institute, the Mount Sinai Research Institute, the Firestone Clinic in Hamilton, Montreal, UHN. So these are the very sort of robust, mature institutes. And these are typically found in academic research universities or large capitalized pharmaceutical industries. Occasionally, they're actually found in both, and there's overlap there. However, I've been very lucky to be the beneficiary of what I think has been a transformative shift, particularly for industry to collaborate with smaller, independent, and newer institutes like ours that present a lot of advantages for collaborative research, particularly being more nimble and more flexible, with reduced bureaucracy, with reduced overhead and operating costs, and with reduced regulatory impediments. That's not to say that we don't vet things very, very carefully, that we don't have a robust regulatory process. This isn't about cutting corners or cutting costs. This is about pivoting quickly when and if you need to accommodate the needs of the research project in a collaborative way. And places like Osler in the last 15 to 20 years have been an extremely fertile ground for those types of collaborative enterprises to take root. And I won't get into that. I'll speak a little bit about some of how that occurred, but really, how does that occur? That occurs because there's a willingness of a partnership between places like ours and sponsors, for example, and those sponsors can be pharmaceutically driven, but they could also be purely academic and research driven at universities as well. So what are those benefits for us? Well, we now are mature enough that we can benefit from both factors, because when you first start up, you have to go slow. Slow and steady wins the race. I don't want anyone here to believe for a second that Osler wasn't engaged in doing very high quality, meaningful research before the banner drop yesterday in the lobby. These types of institutions grow organically over many years. You can't just turn a light bulb on and say, we drop a banner, now we call something, it's something, and it becomes that. We're lucky enough to be able to do that today because of a 10 to 15-year history of what we've already been doing at William Osler. Slowly and surely, we have grown it to be to such a point where it is mature enough that it's now sufficiently staffed with an excellent research team, not just principal investigators and clinicians, but a research team. And here I want to give a shout out to our research team that are not necessarily MDs, and it ranges right from the REB to the administrators to the nurses and the clinical research staff that are behind all of the projects that we do, all the people that put those pieces of paper in front of people like me to sign every day. You know, that takes a lot of work and commitment, and we are mature enough now that our collaborative partners know this. So whereas before we really had to go and look for collaborations, now we are the ones that are being invited to partner and collaborate with institutions, with universities, with pharmaceutical companies. And we can retain a more efficient and review process, and we have a much, much faster turnaround time. And that's very important. Again, going back to the concept of turnaround time. If you are trying to get a study off the ground and it will take you a year just to sort of get, the first patient enrolled, well, that's not very favorable. But if you can do that in 2 to 3 months, well, all of a sudden, that's a huge, huge benefit for our research institute. And that's a win-win also for the sponsor and for the patients, because ultimately the answer of the question comes faster. So I want to shift here a little bit in the last couple of slides, just to give you some more personal stories about the research in action as opposed to what is research collaboration. My own experience with Osler's research. I've been at Osler almost 20 years now, and we started doing, I knew I wanted to do research right from the very beginning, and don't for a second think that if you leave academia, it means you have to stop doing research. Not in the least. A lot of people do choose that path to go to a community hospital, precisely or particularly because they're not interested in being clinician educators or clinician researchers, and that's perfectly fine. That's okay. I chose a different path. My background was in research. My particular background was in molecular genetics, and I continued to do research throughout my graduate career and into clinical training, medical school, residency, and then when I came to Osler. So I had to leverage my curiosity and my knowledge and what I knew I wanted to do in terms of continuing to do research at a place that was going to be supportive. And I found that place at Osler. Again, we grew from a seed, infancy, right up to now. Who would have thought that we would be able to drop the banner and actually have a branded institute where that branding gives you legitimacy. It gives you credibility. It gives you opportunities to expand. But you have to believe that the questions that you're working on are interesting, valid, and relevant. Don't do a research project just because you want to have some type of secondary gain or advance your career at your institution or your hospital or your university, or you want to put it on your CV or whatever the case may be. You have to first of all ask yourself, is this interesting for me? Is this important enough for me to want to devote a certain amount of my time to it? Is it relevant for patients? And so I took advantage of that traditional research background with the very small research team at Osler about 15, 16 years ago. And we've continued to do research all the way right through to today, where we have several ongoing projects. And some of these, I'm going to give you 3 examples: so local, national, and international. So at the local level, almost 20 years ago, we started a tuberculosis clinic at Peel region at our sister hospital at Brampton Civic, where I still staff it to this day. And in fact, I did the TB clinic this morning before coming over here. And we did that in 2008 with Dr. Eileen Davila, who's the medical officer of health for Toronto. Until recently, she used to be the medical officer of health for Peel region. So together, we thought, well, where's the TB? The TB is here at Osler. We need a dedicated clinic. There was no dedicated community TB clinic outside of academia. Let's start this. Yes, it's a clinical clinic. So how does that tie into research? Because we have a database and we can actually measure metrics that allow us to ask the questions that we need to ask about how do we take the clinic in different directions that we need to take. We have over 150 cases of active tuberculosis a year, and that research through the TB clinic has generated a tremendous amount of benefit for our patients with TB of the brain, TB of the uterus, TB of the heart. We've seen TB of every organ. Our staff get asked to speak about tuberculosis all over Canada. I was invited to give a talk on TB at the University of Alberta this past summer, just on our TB clinic, so that people can learn from what are we doing here at Osler in terms of research. So that's one example of a local initiative. At the national level, and I'm so happy to see my friend and my colleague, Dr. Shah, one of our new AVPs. We used to do a lot of research together in the viral hepatitis space. A lot of people wouldn't have known that we were friends and collaborators. Speaking of collaborations, we did numerous projects on viral hepatitis research. And I remain involved with the Connect Network out of the University of Alberta, which is a consortium of researchers in hepatitis C across Canada. I also belong to the Canadian Hepatitis B Network, Dr. Carla Coffin, that's also based out of Calgary. And we're looking at novel treatments for the treatment of hepatitis D or Delta, which is very rare. There's only about 10 people on treatment in Canada for HDV, and Osler has one of those 10 patients. So that's quite impressive that we can actually participate in this type of research. One of our former students through the summer research program, I think she's a physician now, Dr. Vika Misri. She did a project with me many years ago when she was just an undergraduate student, looking at the opiate substitution clinics and a rapid point of care testing for hepatitis C diagnostics. We did some of the early trials in COVID here. We were one of the CATCO centers. That research was published in the CMAJ with our research group here at Osler. We collaborate with the Mount Sinai IPAC team, Dr. Alison McGeer, in carbapenemase-resistant Enterobacteriaceae. We belong to the CLEAR registry on antibiotic utilization with Dr. George Sennell out of Winnipeg. So there's just a lot of opportunity. At the international level, we were so lucky to have our patients contribute to the discovery of a new genotype for hepatitis C, genotype 8. We had 4 patients from our institution. That created a lot of interest in the Punjab area. I was invited to New Delhi to give a talk on the discovery of genotype 8. We've developed partnerships with researchers there to explore this a little further. We have collaborative research with Dr. Alessandra Mangia and a European database on viral hepatitis in Italy. So there's just a lot of opportunities that Osler has given researchers to be able to get to a point where now this is where we land. We land at the inauguration of our dedicated research institute. And my last slide is just to close the loop on collaborations where I started. They are extremely useful, interesting, and vital partnerships that can essentially, what I mentioned, that synergy, the turbocharging of research, but they're a tool. They're a means to an end. Don't use collaborations as the end of it in itself. The goal isn't to go and join as many research clubs as you can and then say, well, I'm here, I'm there, because you'll dilute your power, right? You will dilute your impact. It's better to do fewer things very, very well, a half dozen projects with collaborations, than to be, the second last collaborator of some, faraway project that you really have no impact for. They are a tool. And I believe the best is yet to come. Osler has a very, very bright future in independent and collaborative research. I think that's.
So thank you, Sergio, for that thought-provoking presentation and really giving us some food for thought around collaborative groups and really diversity of thought, really helpful in advancing the work, collaboration, and synergies to make things happen. And being successful within a collaborative partnership requires flexibility so that we have the ability to adapt within the complexities that we have within our health system. And I'm going to hold you up as the poster person for what our institute really is looking at problems and issues, not problems, but issues that are within our community, and then scaling and spreading and sharing both local, nationally, and globally the work that's here. So really poignant presentation and highlighting the support as we go forward for work like what you've engaged in. So we have a number of questions that have been submitted online. But before we go there, I want to open it up to those who are here. And if anyone has a question for Dr. Borgia. Yes.
Your effort, individually and collectively.
I'm just going to ask you to repeat it here so we can go the back in here.
Thank you. Can I just ask you to expand a little bit on how the creation of the Institute will help further your efforts in terms of successful research and collaboration?
Yes, thank you. Thank you for the question. I think that what the Institute will help us do is there's a lot of things, but very quickly, one of them is to showcase and highlight to our internal people, staff, and it could be medical, and it might not necessarily have to be medical, that there are opportunities to participate and get involved in research now that we are official and off the ground and funding. And that gives us strength, because now it demonstrates internally, but also very importantly, externally, that we've somehow sort of we've legitimized ourselves where we can get that credibility to say, this is real. We do real research here. We invite people with their ideas and their interests to join our research team or to come up with an investigator-initiated study. And now we can put all the muscle of Osler behind us. They can't sort of say, oh, that's those guys over there doing these little research projects and, they're dabbling in research. That's not the case anymore. Now Osler has to, give us that front and center credibility that all the researchers have been working on for so many years. So it's going to attract attention. It's going to attract researchers. It's going to attract new staff and students. The collaborative partnership now with TMU and the opportunity for learners to come who may already be engaged in research, but were afraid that they would be orphaned from a research perspective, that's no longer going to be the case. Learners from whatever university, and it doesn't have to be TMU, it could be from University of Toronto or McMaster, where I hold my academic appointment. They can continue their research at Osler, and I can continue my research at Osler.
Can I add to that a little bit? Just from the perspective of even with our community partners and our investors as well. They know that if we have a recognized institute, everything covered under one umbrella, that we have the infrastructure, the support of our organization to carry out large-scale research projects and the commitment to do that. So it is a validation for sure and a platform for us to continue the work going forward. Okay, so I have a question online. That's what's the biggest barriers to study infectious diseases?
The biggest
Barriers to researching infectious diseases.
right. That I'm quite happy that someone asked that question. So there are several, but one of the pressing challenges in the infectious diseases world today is the ever emergence and progression of antibiotic resistance, particularly in the gram-negative infection space. And this is a huge problem for us in the ID world internationally, but it's particularly pressing and problematic in a country like Canada. We are a huge geographic country, but we're a very small country from a population and being on the global forefront of prioritization for the acquisition of medications, drugs, antibiotics, and research in this area, simply because to be honest, there are fiscal challenges in Canada because of our geography for investments in this type of research in gram-negative resistance and antibiotics. I hope that changes soon. That is one huge pressing challenge. We have the intellectual capital in Canada. We have the resources. We have the ability, the desire, and the wherewithal to do this. But that type of research, collaborative research, requires political will, major investments, and it requires companies to say, we want to bring Canada into that loop. And they just look at it from where's the market, right? Where's the market? The market's not Canada. So that's one huge, and that's just one example in the infectious diseases world. Another challenge in researching infectious diseases is the lack of standardized information technology across Canada. That's a huge challenge. I suspect that's not unique to Canada, but other countries do a much, much better job on the data gathering. In the US, for example, with the NIH and the Department of Human Health and Health Services, their data collection and capture on communicable diseases, whether it's tuberculosis or meningitis or the parasitic diseases, is robust. In Canada, that is a huge, huge challenge. So it makes the management and the research of these infections and the treatment of these infections quite difficult because we often don't have the full picture. And it's difficult for the government to intersect with researchers like ours. So that's another challenge.
Okay. I think we'll bring the session to a close. I do want to thank everyone who attended in person and online, and to our esteemed colleague who took the time to spend with us and sharing your insights. I really want to thank you, Sergio, for being here today. And I welcome everyone to take advantage of this week's activities across the sites, and many of them are virtual. So everything is online, and really encourage you to participate. And just thank you for being here today. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
So well done. Thank you.